Just to confirm, you'd like to call Chad Otterstrom?
Yes.
Calling Chad Otterstrom.
Welcome to Season 3 of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast.
Okay, perfect. 1 second, please.
Tala in ett meddelande efter tonen.
Hi, this is Sean. I'm not here right now.
You have reached Mike.
Hi, this is Jim. Leave me a message, and I will call you back as soon as I can.
Hi, you've reached Jeremy Jones.
Yeah, I'm going to call you back in 10. Sorry, dude.
Hey, listeners. Welcome back to the FNRad Snowboarding Podcast. Off the top, I just got to say that this year's been amazing for the podcast. The feedback's been awesome and continues to grow. We're getting new interest from awesome companies like Dakine Canada. Thanks, Brian, for the hookup. I've got some new Dakine outerwear to rock. That's rad. Tribute Board Shop out of Nelson, BC. Shane gave me some music to work with, and we're going to do a bunch more stuff with them, I'm sure. And as always, Season 3 is brought to you by Wired Snowboards, a Vancouver-based specialty snowboarding manufacturer. You can order a custom board from them. You can order one of their amazing shapes. You can design your own graphics. All their boards ride amazing. I've seen lots of people out on the hill riding Wired snowboards. I've talked to every single one of them. They love them. I love mine. Go to wiredsnowboards.com and get 10% off a quality snowboard by using the offer FNRad at checkout. Also, check out the boardroomsnowboardshop.com. Boardroom is Vancouver's premier snowboard shop. They've been in business for a gazillion years. I worked for them for a long time. People who work there are rad. They offer a performance guarantee and a price guarantee on everything they sell. Go to boardroomshop.com, use offer code FNRAD5 to save 5% off sale items, FNRAD10 to save 10% off any regular priced items in the store. They will ship to you anywhere in North America. Alright, I just watched a couple of Chad Otterstrom's parts from the early 2000s, and it instantly brought me back to those days. Chad consistently did tricks at the edge of what was possible. He rode equally well in both directions. He consistently went bigger than anybody on the features he hit and embodied the smooth, controlled style that earned him parts in all the major snowboard videos of that era. I reached out to Chad and was surprised to find out that he's recently been listening to the FNRad podcast and was really stoked that he was down to chat. Have you always been a Colorado guy, or where did you start?
I grew up in Minnesota.
Wow.
Shoreview, Minnesota, like Trollhagen, Wild Mountain, and then in November of 1995, a group of my friends moved to Colorado, and just because, growing up, my parents and stuff would come out here on vacation to Colorado because they had some friends in Denver. So I really wanted to move to Utah to high school, but it was just kind of a far reach from Minnesota, and I kind of already had friends in Colorado. So I did, 19 years in Minnesota, and then I've been in Colorado on and off for the last 22 years, I believe.
Like, what age were you when you first got a snowboard, and what board was it?
I grew up skiing kind of, but my brother was a skateboarder. Mm-hmm. So we kind of, once snowboards came on the hill, we're like, we need those. And that was like in the 80s, and they were just kind of starting to arrive in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. But my first snowboard was kind of one my brother built. He built it in 9th grade, which would have been like, 86 or something. He built it out of plywood.
Wow.
And then he built these like wooden bindings with shoelace straps on them, and then so I'd always kind of try to ride that in the backyard. It never really worked too good, but it was kind of my first experience on snowboard. Mm-hmm. That was probably like 86 or something. And then a couple years later, I got a Black Snow Legend. It was like one of those ones. I think a lot of people had that as their first snowboard.
I think you're right. I had the Edge
in the late 80s. That was the good one. That was the next one up.
And those bindings would break right away. I remember just scouring the neighborhoods and looking for people that had snowboards leaning up against their walls of their garage, and then we would go and swap out our broken bindings for their not broken bindings.
Right. No, that's why I ended up having to get a real snowboard, because I broke the high back on the Legend.
Yep.
And then obviously the next year came around, and I'm like, well, I need to get another snowboard. And then so I got one of those snowboards from the back of a magazine where you can get a year-old board. So I think I got one for like $150, $200. Kemper Mini Rampage.
Kempers were bulletproof, but they didn't have inserts, right? So you had to drill them.
You had to, and then mine definitely didn't have a side cut either. Now that I think about it, it was kind of just like a especially in Minnesota, you're kind of just, I don't know, it was interesting. I remember the first year I snowboarded on it, I don't think I made it down the hill without falling. I like sucked at it super bad. Like Sorrells in a camper, you know, you're just like, yeah.
So by the time you're 19, have you started to compete and stuff? Is that
when I was 19? Yeah, I started when I was like 12 or 13. But when I was 19, I already had sponsors. I rode for this company, Kingpin Snowboards.
Rad.
Out of northern Minnesota. I had a bunch of friends who grew up at Trolagan, and one of them, this kid Marty, had already rode for him, and so I had full sponsors then. I had this clothing company called Beacon too. They were out of Minneapolis.
Rad.
So I only got one pair of pants and one jacket, I think, and then like they kind of fell off, and then Kingpin kind of stayed alive until about the spring of '96 actually.
Yep.
But yeah. So I think I won nationals in '95, like USASA nationals.
Wow.
We did, because in Minnesota that was kind of the thing you do, is like just, you know, it was kind of like the AM contest really only showed up, and it was just USASA.
Yep.
A lot of kids like were semi-pro Burton dudes and whatever.
That was sort of the best way to get into the sponsorship track, was to do a bunch of contests and do well.
Yeah.
You win nationals, you're definitely going to get hooked up. And Burton went after a lot of those like successful competitive guys. Was there ever an offer on the table from Burton, or?
No, there wasn't. I just stayed on Kingpin because it was a local company and they were my friends. So
yeah.
It was like, even if Burton made me an offer, I wouldn't have taken it.
Cool.
But yeah, no, it was, and that was kind of like the only way to do anything in Minnesota. It's like we did street rails and stuff like that, because that was kind of obviously the up in the ante hard hung Domus era.
Yeah.
So we'd always go do that. But I mean, in Minnesota, it's not like it is today, I guess, because now you can just throw it on Instagram and people notice it. But you know, there was a scene there, but it was just no one ever saw it really.
Right.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's dope. So when you move to Colorado, you start filming and stuff. Is that kind of where that whole side of it comes in?
I moved out of Colorado out of high school, just kind of like, you know, still kind of pretty amateur, even though I rode for people and, you know, I had to work for it. But I had a friend, Kurt, who made just kind of home VHS movies, you know, for fun. And we'd go out and, you know, just film High 8 every day. We'd go to like Loveland Pass and Bertha Pass. Not really even expecting to go filming. We just kind of something we did, I guess. Mm-hmm. Go build kickers and film them, you know. And then we all ended up with video parts for like the first 2 years I was out there.
That's amazing.
Just underground, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was, in the long run, I guess that would be kind of training for when it got serious, when Dogger and those guys came along. So I did that for 2 years, I think, and then stayed USASA level for those first 2 years, you know?
Yep.
And did only kind of amateur contest. And then I got a job at Mount Hood those summers, and I just kind of worked my ass off, I guess, learning tricks and snowboarding and getting everything dialed.
Where did you work in Mount Hood?
And then I worked at High Cascade. I worked at Mount Hood Snowboard Camp at first, and then I got a job at High Cascade.
Oh, that's the glory days of those camps too, huh?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, well, it was right after the glory days. I feel like the glory days are when, like, Subject Hawkinson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep, I agree.
I was out there then, but I wasn't working there.
And so you get on at High Cascade. Did you live in Govey and just spend the summers there, like, snowboarding every day?
Yep, it was awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'd been going there since high school because I'd save my money and go for a session, you know, at, like, USSTC to make, because that was the cheapest one. And then, so I've been going there since the summer after 9th grade.
Amazing.
But then I got a job there. I actually got the job there out of high school, you know, and did that for 3 years. And then met up with, like, Kurt Heine.
Yep.
And those dudes would show up, you know, and it was cool because High Cascade, like, Peter would show up, Blaze would show up. I was friends with Blaze already because I'd known him from camps earlier, and Peter. So everybody would show up, and it was like super pros would show up, and you could just shred with them, you know what I mean? Like, It was like, that's what made it, you know, it was like super personal. Like, I don't know. I thought it was cool. I was always super shy.
Yeah, you came across in the videos as just like someone who let the riding talk for you. You weren't like a over-the-top, you know, claimer in any way. It was just like smooth, calculated, super good style.
Yeah, just strict.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do was tricks, you know. Like, I was kind of a trick dude. Like, now that I see snowboarding, you see, like, obviously your Craig Kelly style interviews, and I was like, wow, I should have gone and done that. But, like, I was just so, like, determined to, like, do tricks and learn every trick, you know what I mean? And I'd watch Mac Dog movies. And
Yep.
you'd be like, I want to learn all those tricks Peter Line did.
Yeah.
You go to the hill and, you know, beat yourself up till you get them type thing.
That's amazing.
And that's what you could do that at Hood every single day, because you'd have a 30-foot park jump and a half pipe. You could, like, go learn anything you wanted, you know?
I think that Mount Hood is the birthplace of freestyle because so many super pros went there and so many ideas were banged off such good groomers. Timberline really listened to the riders and built all these weird features that a lot of them had never been built before. So a lot of stuff would start in Timberline in the summer, and then people would go back to their home resorts and be like, I really liked sessioning this particular feature that I saw in the summer there. That's how it feels.
Totally. I mean, if you look at, like, Daniel Frank and Peter Line, like, remember seeing rodeos at Mount Hood Snowboard Camp, you know? Like,
yep.
And just everything, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that was, I went down there that year, 95.
Yeah.
We went down for the summer, and actually Kevin Jones was staying at the house we were at. And he was riding and doing all these flat spins. I remember being like, oh, I'd like to be able to flat spin like that. That's incredible. And that was the first year that Daniel Frank was doing those rodeos. Because Peter had done the Misty fives, like the Cork fives and the Cork sevens. Those were the first.
I mean, then he did a back rodeo like that one spring, and then came and got it dialed at Hood.
Yeah, that was the summer that I watched the trick progression go like way out of where I could keep up.
Right.
Yeah,
I remember going there one summer where the cool trick was late back 180, and then the next summer the cool trick was like late front 3, and then it just got insane.
Yeah,
like anybody could do the late 180 and the late front 3 and have style. And then, then once you started doing more than 540, 720,
and the invert thing, taking off of your heel side edge and spinning backside, it was weird for me. I just couldn't wrap my head around getting over the fear of committing to that.
Yeah, no, I still can't. People do it flat spin now. It sounds insane.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's true, right? Unreal. How long is it before you jump ship from Kingpin? And what happens there? Like, do you go to your friends and say, like, hey, I'm getting an offer to get paid, obviously I should do it? Or is it just Kingpin snowboarding peters out?
No, Kingpin and just they went out of business.
Okay.
And then I made like a resume. Peter Line had actually called me like a year earlier to ride for Division 23, but like I was too shy to even hit him up.
Wow.
And that was like when I was in high school. And then, anyways, I hit up a few companies just to send out a resume, and then this dude Romy was the team manager for Silence, and I kind of knew Blaze, and he hit me back up. He's like, "Hey man, we'll give you boards," and then so I got on Silence from there. And then we were on Silence. I was on Silence for a couple of years with like Blaze, Ami, and Vile, and like Romy was our team manager. And that was, I think that lasted 2 years maybe, like 97, 98. And then obviously then that ended, and then M3 started in 99.
We did pretty well with it up here. I worked at the boardroom actually for years and years. And we brought up Silence probably the first year even. And the owners and the people that were behind it just... It was an easy sell, but the boards were good, but everything was cap construction then. Remember that? When everything was just total cap construction. Yeah. I found the boards to be a little bit stiff, so like I guess if you're a faster rider, they were pretty aggressive boards for sure. How did the transition to M3 happen? Who was there at that time? Was Selaznick involved with M3 and Molly and all that stuff?
Well, no, M3, it was Molly Snowboards, MLY.
Yep.
And they wanted to, and then Blaze had approached them. Blaze was kind of like the front runner of everything, and he approached them to starting a different brand, you know, just like, hey, we don't want to ride for MLY, but you want to start a brand, so let's just start a brand. It was Scotty Whitlake, Kendall, Blaze and I basically brainstorming at Mount Hood, and Blaze was kind of the head of it all.
Rad.
And then there's Risto Scott had already ridden for MLY, so we put him on M3, and
dope. Brad
Chaffel maybe, I think, and then kind of started like that, and then we got Mikey on. But Blaze was basically started M3 in the basement of this building at government camp one summer because Silence was going under.
That's amazing. M3 was so sick. Like I can still remember the graphic program now. The marketing behind it was right on point. And so that was that was because of that list of riders you were just talking about. You guys would brainstorm brand imaging and graphics and stuff like that.
Yep. And it was, for 100%. And a lot of it was Blaze because he's just, super OCD, like really concerned about graphics and boards and everything. So it really worked out in all of our favors. And we were kind of just more like Scotty and Kendall and Mikey. And Mikey might have been more involved, but we kind of just did more of the riding,
Yeah. That would have been the heyday of filming for you guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was, everything was, because everything was covered and it was just, we were all riding our best and it was fun.
Yeah.
And it was just such a good feel, it was like film with Whitey and MacDog. And I had so much respect for those guys' movies that when you go film with them, you always have to give them your best, and everybody was doing that. Yeah.
And just extra stoked to be out there. Were you the type of person that when the camera was rolling, you could turn it up a little bit?
I mean, I sometimes I could, sometimes I couldn't, but I would always give it my best. I mean, in '98, I remember hitting a quarter pipe at Squaw Valley, and I landed on MacDog, and I was just like, he was never gonna film me again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all stressed out.
Yeah.
And he looked all pissed, and I'm just like, but then he was cool. He was like, oh, dude, whatever. And, like, obviously, it was just like, go, go, go.
Those moments are so horrible, hey? I've had a couple of them. I spilled pop at an SIA show, soda all over Tom Sims and Burt Lamar. Like, it just fell on the ground, splashed all over those guys. And I was like,
that's funny.
Oh, my God. And Tom was super cool, and Burt was so pissed. I just, like, turned around and...
Burt got pissed. Bert's kind of like that. I've hung out with Burt.
Yeah.
But as far as Noah Solaznik goes, though, they took MLY, and Blaze kind of team managed MLY with Romy.
Yeah.
They put Noah, Nate, and Jimmy Halapoff, I think, on like MLY.
Wow.
For just to like kind of like because just kind of like give their career some breath, I guess.
Yeah.
Obviously Noah was kind of wherever, and then I mean that just obviously didn't work out. Neither did M3.
Right.
Just because they all both fell apart at the same time, but Noah was involved with them for a couple of years. Right,
because I've mentioned the Noah thing to other riders, and they're like, I don't think Noah ever rode for M3, but MLY it was. No. That's right. And
he rode for MLY. Blaze used to live with him in Tahoe, so he's just like, Noah, you want to ride for MLY?
It was insane the way that snowboarding would turn its backs on the previous generation. I've said it in the show a few times, but like we were just always so, as an industry, always so on to the next thing. Like, can you imagine Noah not being on like a major label? Like, there was no heritage people in snowboarding. I mean, Burton still had Craig. That was because Burton and Craig were like inseparable.
Yeah, and they could afford it too,
Yeah. And then around that 2000, 2001, the whole industry just fired all their pros, basically. Everybody was like, oh, we have no more money for that. We're going to go away from pro models.
Especially Burton. They'd have their stints where they're like, well, we got to cut 6 dudes.
Yeah.
Just because that's where we're at. And you're like, they'd cut half their team.
Isn't that nuts? Yeah, when you think of like the number of brands that got a real boost from Burton chopping someone from the team.
Right? Full brands have been born from it. Like, yes, obviously.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, I think Rome.
But I mean, it's crazy too because Rome did for sure, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I was going to say, I mean, snowboarding was so progressive at the time too that it was cutthroat. Like 2 years later, they'd be like amazing. And now I feel like it's pretty competitive. Well, the progression isn't as competitive anymore, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not current. I snowboard still a lot, but I find it difficult to maintain interest in what's actually happening now. I think more just that it doesn't have the cool culture that, like you mentioned Halapoff on MLY. Like, think of the number of dudes that, so you're the other end of the scale. You let your riding speak for itself, and got in the movies on 100% pure talent. But there were guys like Palmer in the first generation that just like claimed, shave their head, have a mohawk, do whatever. And that made snowboarding really fun, that balance between people that were, just progressive riders and people that were built the
personalities.
attitude of the sport. Now that that attitude's gone, like seeing the Olympic big air, I just saw parts of it when I was in the airport, and I was like,
it was painful.
Every rider could just be any rider.
Right.
It seemed like
True.
They'd obviously trained on airbags or trampolines or both, or like a lot of gymnastic training, and that was what separated snowboarding even in that late 90s era, where ski jumping was those technical flips. It was basically quad
now
corks.
I mean, now it is ski jumping. It's just you grab your skis, you grab your board.
That's it, dude.
But
yeah,
it is 100%. I mean, I feel like we're extremely fortunate to. I mean, the way you're talking, you obviously grew up in the same era. It's like to be able to be a part of snowboarding when it was coming around in the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s was pretty magical.
It was amazing.
Now it's pretty stale. You know what people are gonna do. Like before you watch a MacDog teaser, you're like, I need to see that teaser because I have no idea what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
Now, very, very few people do that these days. I mean, someone like Scotty Stevens or I don't know who else. Like, it's always entertaining to watch Nicholas footage, Still Terrier footage.
Man Boys.
I'll still watch that stuff.
I really like the Man Boys stuff. Boys is like the through line from you guys to Man Boys that feels like the same sport. You know what I mean? A bunch of bros filming in the backcountry, building perfect features, and then pushing the progression of tricks on those features. Yeah.
Doing it themselves, not like snowboarding is like it's just gone so mainstream with competition that's what a lot of people see. But like when you go do it yourself like that, it's always fun to watch.
Yeah,
outside of some scaffolding jump,
Yeah, that
DIY is the best.
Putting the finishing touches on the feature, and knowing that first time you hit it, you know already how it's going to feel because you built it. Yeah.
It's I mean that's the feeling. Like that's what like when you, I don't know, for me.
Yeah.
That's what it's always been. It's like you go learn tricks in the park so you can go do stuff like that. When you go hit it, you have a little more confidence when you go build your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, well, I mean, so that's what it is for me 100% too. It's like, I don't know. Now, the competition side is like kids just go to the park every day now and don't. A lot of them don't get to experience that. And when I was a coach for 4 years, and I always would push that. I'd be like, we're gonna go build jumps today. We're not hitting the park.
Rad. Oh, that's such a rad thing to teach the campers. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, as long as there's been competitive sports, there's been people that do it different ways, right? Like Craig Kelly trained. I remember riding with Jimmy Scott and free riding with Jimmy Scott. No offense to him, but he just couldn't do it. He didn't grow up doing it. That wasn't the part of the sport that he loved. And I never got that. I thought, why would you want to be a competitive snowboarder that can't actually enjoy snowboarding? Because the enjoyment's the POW day and the kicker session with your buddies, and maybe you have a fire, even like being out in the being out in the woods. And picking some weird feature and sessioning it and taking some photos and hanging with your buddies. That's whenever I'd go to a competition, I'd be like, this is like the worst. This is like waiting around, and the people who are organizing it are always stressed and there's no.
I mean, Jimmy was like a roller skater from SoCal or something, wasn't he?
He 100%.
I mean, like
was
Craig's
a
to
roller
Washington.
Skater. Yeah.
Yeah, so like even me from Minnesota, it was hard for me to break into like really enjoying and loving that kind of like split boarding, riding POW, hitting cliffs, because I didn't even know how to do it. I had to live in Colorado for a couple of years before I even really, because it takes work to like get good at that. Because the first couple of days you're just tomahawking all day and you go home wet. You're like, oh, that was painful.
Yeah.
And then especially because you already think you're good because you got really good at spinning and jibbing in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, I already got this. And then you go do this and you go to Whistler and you're like supposed to be hitting these jumps and riding as good as Devin, and you're so far away from it. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, totally.
And, but it's so much work to do that. But once you figure it out, then it's just like that's all you want to do, you know.
So did you get a sled pretty early on?
Yeah, we always had a little crappy sled that we drive around Vail Pass with, and but nothing that like Whistler style. And then I think 1999 I bought a sled, and all it did was break down all year, and we got stuck. You know what I mean? You get a sled, you basically your first year you just expect to go get stuck every day.
Yeah, it's the
and
exact
that's a
same
whole,
thing.
you know. And then I was getting paid then, so I was like, whatever, that's lame. I'm not, you know, that's just too much work. And now I'm just like, man, I blew it. I should have put more work in.
Yeah, got over that hump.
But
right.
yeah, but now, I mean, I did. I eventually got over the hump, and now, you know, now that's all I want to do is go sled or go split board, and I'll still hit rails and stuff like that. But it's like, you know, that's just when there's no pow day or nothing else to ride groomer, you know, go hit park stuff. But
Rad.
the number one goal is to, you know, for me, to keep me happy. I like riding pow.
Crazy.
I was just up in Canada. I was just up in Whitewater, and it was. I've been up there a couple of times, and it's still. I don't want to talk about it because I don't want more people going up there.
Yeah.
I loved it more than anything, you know.
It's fun. Yeah, I saw that you were at Baker. I was like, I should try and track him down while he's at Baker. What was the road trip? It was just, you know, like you do it every year?
No, I did it a few years ago. I started, the first road trip we took was 97, where we went Salt Lake, Tahoe, Bend, Oregon, and then back to Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5 years ago, I saw Justin Hosnick's movie, and it was Giggy's part, and it was all filmed at Whitewater. And I'm like, I'm gonna go to Whitewater. That looks awesome. I just like drove up there with some of my friends, and we camped out at the base for like 20 days and rode Whitewater.
Wow.
And then I took a job after that, and I was coaching full time for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And this last year I snapped, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't snowboard. You just stand around. So I quit, and now I work for Academy Snowboards, but I'm just like, I'm going to go on a road trip this winter, traveling all of North America. So I went Jackson, Whitewater, Baker, Tahoe, Salt Lake, back to here, like a full month of North America shredding.
Those are such good resorts. You just rhymed off like every world-class North American resort, really.
Yeah. Over the years of traveling and riding, I just picked out all my favorite spots, and I'm like, I'm going to go here and here and here.
That's
worked
so
out.
Dope. So dope. How was Jackson?
Jackson was amazing. I had to leave just because I was there for too long. I was there for 10 days, and it was only a month-long trip. And I was staying at my friend Willie, who owns Bluebird's house, who owns Bluebird, staying in his parking lot in my van, or in his driveway.
Yeah.
And so I just stayed there for 10 days. That was really awesome. Shredded with a bunch of friends, and we got POW every day.
Damn.
Built some jumps. Got anxiety because I hadn't built jumps for like 5 years. So I was like, it wasn't even a big jump, but I was like, all right, we got to go hit this and land tricks tomorrow. So I don't know, it was kind of fun. But yeah, Jackson was amazing.
Did the
Jackson's
muscle memory
good, you know?
kick in? Was it fun to hit a jump again and just?
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It worked out. I mean, I've always hit park jumps over the years, but I haven't built a backcountry jump that was like a legitimate backcountry jump for 5 years, you know?
Right.
So
it's
got to be a little lighter on your edges because the snow's softer.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, Jackson side country, like access right from the resort it's amazing. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then Baker's the same.
Yeah, like right out of the resort. When the clouds clear at Baker, I got a pretty clear day at Baker.
Lucky.
Where we hiked out. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
So you're still fully into it. Did you have a period of burnout where you're like, you know what, I'm going to go work in some other industry?
Yeah, no, I did and I didn't. It's like you just get burnt out, you know. But when I was a pro snowboarder, I was way more burnt because like once I first started filming, it was fun, but then it got old because you were like felt like that's what you had to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a drug addiction, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like you're
tremendous
you
pressure.
Finally made it, and then all of a sudden you're like want to have a life and you can't because you're on the road 24/7.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of got burning, just being on the road too much.
Yeah.
But and I mean, I've ridden too much POW too. It's like I've done 2 days at Eagle Pass where you're at the gun. I wasn't burnt, but you're like, oh, I'm good. And then you can be good for a whole year or two without having to ride POW again because it's so good up there.
Yeah.
But, I've never really been too burnt out. The only thing I got burnt out on was, like I said, it's like after you filmed everything, like I'd film technical difficulties part, I remember that and Revival, and I'm like, I just gave them all tricks I have. Can't do any other tricks. And then you have pressures of sponsors being like, you know, we're going to keep doing this. They don't really pressure you. I just put the pressure on myself, and then you have to like go learn new tricks and go push yourself in other directions. And I guess when you look back at it, it was like totally worth it.
Yeah.
And, you know, like worth the work. But you didn't know what you're getting into. You're just like diving into the abyss of like, I don't know where I'm going to go with this, but I'm just going to keep snowboarding and hope it works out.
Rad. The season between technical difficulties and simple pleasures?
And the next one was Amp, I think.
Amp, yeah.
And then after Amp, I started getting pretty burnt on like trying to figure out tricks.
I think Devin mentioned it at exactly that same time. Like, I think there was that really, really good snow year, and then it was followed by like a kind of crappy snow year. So it was, which makes it more difficult to get a good part. I remember him mentioning that like there was a tremendous amount of pressure to put together another good part. He knows if his part's not as good as the one before, and then that could bum you out for a whole year, right? You're like, now there's
it bums you. It's weird that it bums you out, but like if you push through it, then you're better for it. But it doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah,
you just got to keep going, I guess.
Yeah. So M3, did you get another sponsor after that? Was it like
M3? Yeah, that was 2002, I believe. That spring.
Yeah.
They're just like, Yoshida's pulling the plug. It's over. And then I was kind of spoiled at that point, so I was just like, whatever, you know, like I'm just gonna ride whatever I want. I rode Genius that summer or something, and then
rad.
And then Forum made me an offer because I already rode for Foursquare.
Yep.
And so then I was on Forum for a year.
Dope.
After M3 tanked, which kind of sucked. Blaze kept M3 alive. You know, he went and saved the name and kept it going, but we were just like, I'm over it. And obviously Peter and Ricky and all those guys kind of made me an offer to be on Forum. And I was like, I couldn't really pass that up. It was like to be on a team of like dudes like that. You're like, well, that's like, you know, that's the end all kind of, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I went and did that, and that was 2003, and that was Video Gang's year.
Yeah.
And that one, I actually hurt myself. I filmed that whole part in May, except for one shot.
Wow.
I was like hurt the entire year.
Oh man.
And that year was awesome. We went on a world tour that fall to premiere the movie, and I don't know. I wrote for that's what happened after M3. But then the year after that, I mean, I was just kind of an average dude on the team, if not, you know, whatever. Their Forum 8 was pretty hyped out, you know.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
So it was kind of just like I was kind of just like one of the leftovers. So anyways, but then also that was when Forum started having problems, and then they sold to Burton. So that only lasted like a year, a little over a year. It was a pretty awesome little over a year for sure. And then from there, it's pretty much been Academy only. I rode for Rossignol for a couple of years, but I've been on Academy basically since 2003 or 2004.
Okay, so what's the deal with Academy? I know the name, I just don't know the backstory.
Academy Snowboards, this guy JB out of Tahoe, Matt Peterson kind of started it, 2002, 2003. And I was roommates with Matt Peterson. He wanted to get me on, but I was already on Forum. And then Forum ended, and then I got on Academy. Well, it didn't end, but, you know, I was on the bottom of the totem pole, so it's just kind of like, they're like, well, we're going to make you a really small offer. And I was like, whatever. And so then, just on Academy. And then I was on them till like 2008, and I think they had a bunch of production issues in China. And then I had a Rossignol offer for a couple of years, but Academy's been around since then. And anyways, that's the backstory basically. It's just a snowboard company out of Tahoe. Their deal is quality progression and individuals. It's like, and he's only, honest, obviously with snowboard sales over the last 6 years, he's kind of just been holding steady, just himself, JB, keeping it alive with a small team.
Yeah.
We had a really good grassroots team in I think 2006, 2007. We had Scott Stevens, Chris Grenier, Jonas Michelot, you know, Danimals, Mike Casanova. We had all these grassroots teams, but then those dudes all blew up, and we're like, well,
yeah.
Like they all respectfully left, and we're like, we're still good friends with everybody. You know, we're like, we can't really pay you what Solomon or Capita is going to pay you, so you know, kick ass, you guys rule. And that around that time too is when Academy was having problems with production, and then kind of fell off for a couple of years, and then JB's been keeping it alive, and then just this last year as I was coaching, he calls me up and he's like, "Hey man, you want back on? We can start the graduate series. We'll make because they have like all park kids, and he's like, we'll make a board for you just for older snowboarders, just like a more like a directional twin, like freeridey board."
Perfect.
And I'm like, and then I got back on and I'm basically team manager, photographer, marketer, social media guy.
Nice.
I do all kinds of stuff. I help out with sales. So it's just JB and I now.
That's rad.
He's like, we're getting our boards made at Never Summer now too, down in Denver.
Yeah,
we don't
US
have to fly
made
to China
boards.
to check up on our boards.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, 2-year warranties. So
the boards are solid. And they don't fall apart. They ride well.
No.
And now with the Sims thing too, people are hyped on the new Sims boards, and I'm like, well, they're basically just Never Summer boards with Sims graphics.
They are, but I mean with different shapes, because Never Summer makes rocker camber, and Sims and us make camber boards.
Just
so
camber, right?
That's kind of our our little niche that we have, because they don't make any other camber boards coming out of their factory.
And Academy's doing well. It's supporting the guys that are there, so that's important.
Yeah.
And it's fun,
just
right?
JB and I right now.
Yeah, and it's fun.
No, it's super fun. Like, being a team manager is awesome. I pick guys that are, there's a lot of dudes on the team, but we just it's fun to be pick guys that have, just style and power, or just style, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't care what tricks you're doing. I just want you guys to go ride and send me some clips every once in a while. You guys, just, I don't know, keeping it fun, quality progression individuals.
That's a perfect snowboard company. The buzz in the industry for maybe, God, who knows now, 4 or 5 years, there's this kind of corporate panic of oh no, snowboarding, how do we make it bigger? How do we grow it? Why are we not growing? But it's really just big corporate snowboarding that is, they're looking at bottom lines.
Yeah.
The core and
if you go to Mount Baker,
you
go to any resort, they are way more busy. I mean, I was at Baker on a Sunday, and it was their busiest day on record.
Yeah.
You try to go up the canyons in Utah, you unless you leave at 6 a.m., you're gonna get stuck.
Yeah.
You leave, it's not dying. It's just the sales have changed into a different form, I think.
Yep. I think snowboarding, it was so much fun, and it burned so brightly for so long that going to normal, you know what I mean? The thing that they're actually usually talking about is why are the trade shows dying? Why is the industry having such a hard time being what it was in the 90s and early 2000s? That's because it's just that format doesn't work. You going into a shop with the boards is more productive than you going and setting up a trade show booth. It's that stuff doesn't really make sense.
And now with the internet, you can kind of just, after a few years of getting used to it, you can figure it out. You don't need to go look at stuff. You're like, well, this is what I'm getting. Why do I got to spend $1,000 to go to Denver?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look at...
Even though we did have a good trade show, because we were in the Never Summer booth, so we had a lot of people rolling through our booth.
Yeah, affiliating yourself with those guys makes a lot of sense right now, because their story of just being made in the USA, and actually their company philosophy from back in the day was rider driven. They wanted people to get out and snowboard during the winter. A lot of their guys, they laid off for the winter, so guys would be on unemployment and just out snowboarding. And then the spring would come around and they, go back to work. And they made a statement early on. Their mission statement didn't include selling to big box stores. It's we're just going to only make enough for specialty retailers, and that's it. I respect that. I think that was dope.
Yeah, no, and it's held on, and their boards are strong. They were tanks at first, and then now they've trimmed them down to where they're lighter than most snowboards out there, and they still hold up. Mm-hmm. It's for me to be a brand nowadays, I'm old. I'm 40, I'm not old, but I'm 41. So it's if I'm going to go snowboarding, I want to ride the best snowboards I can. Mm-hmm. Or I'm just not going to do it. I'd rather just go get a job being a bartender or something. So that's what's, it's I only want to make the best and ride the best. So we can do it with them. So it's pretty cool.
That's sick. How many days a year are you getting these days?
I ride every day.
Amazing.
Except for today, I took a break. I rode pretty hard yesterday, but I ride, November to, now that I split board, I ride, especially in Colorado because we have 14,000 foot peaks.
Rad.
I'll ride into June.
Unbelievable.
And then that's usually 4 days a week. And then we do summer camps here at at Copper now.
Oh, I saw that.
Through Woodward. And they're super fun, actually. Tons of kids show up, and we have a little conveyor belt. It's pretty fun. So I'll ride there in July a little bit for like a couple days, but mostly, November to June.
I'm stoked. Like in the first season, I was interviewing guys like Damien, Keith Wallace, like a lot of guys that actually left snowboarding in the mid-90s and just never went back. Yeah. And I'm like, how could you possibly do that? I wake up and check the report like every single day. Like if it's good, I'm going to go and skip a bit of work and come in late, be like, oh, sorry guys, I had an appointment. You know what I mean? Like, I'm hungry. No, I mean, it's like
Kevin Jones says, it's like it's in your blood or it isn't, I guess. I don't know.
That is true.
I left my doors open in my van and just snowed 2 inches.
Oh,
but you haven't been, once you've been doing it for 10 years, you're going to be burnt on the industry for sure. I feel like, but if you know how to go ride POW and like go ride, say Squaw Valley or Baker, like, dude, like I saw Tex, he was selling snowboards at my Baker snowboard shop.
Yep.
And I was in Tahoe, and we were coming down Donner Pass Road, and Farmer was the dude checking tires. And he's like, "What up?" And he's like, "I rode Squaw today. It was sick." And you know what I mean? Like,
I know exactly what you mean.
That was insane.
Yeah, I saw Tex and Dano at opening day at Baker this year. I love to go for opening day because it's all the hungry dudes, and they always open with a ton of POW. And I followed those guys on a lap, and at 50, Tex rides faster than anyone I've ever ridden with. Just smooth, calm, fast. It's like, wow, oh my God. It inspires me. Like, that's where I want to be in, 6 years.
And I mean, those guys were probably around before snowboarders got burnt out on the industry, like they were just doing their own thing, being crazy.
I think Farmer, like, he was kind of oblivious to the industry. When I talked to him about when he was on K2, he was getting magazine coverage on Summit snowboards. I'm like, how did that work? Like, what was that thing? And he was like, oh, well, K2 knew that Summit was only making a couple of boards. They probably didn't care. I'm like, yeah, they probably cared a lot. You had like a signed contract that you would. He literally just was like, oh, well, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't want to make a giant board with my face on the bottom in green. Like, so my friend made it. So I rode that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. But and still.
You're not supposed to do that.
Still till now, like, I literally don't think he got burned out on the industry because he just didn't care what anybody said ever. And there's a few people like that were able to kind of negotiate through relatively unscathed. But oh my God, the industry.
I guess if you compare him to like a Craig Kelly, it's like a polar opposite. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. Craig understood.
He seemed very structured with everything he did.
Yes.
Farmer's like, whatever, I'm just gonna go rip.
Yeah. He kind of said in his interview too, like, I think if I would have taken it more seriously, I would have been able to, maybe make some more money. But I think that was the thing. He didn't see it as a job. So he would work so that he could snowboard all winter. But
because his career was probably kind of short-lived, right?
3 years.
I don't know about short-lived, but it's pretty early on where you weren't making much money.
Yeah.
Even if you were doing good.
Yeah. You guys were the first generation where you could make a respectable career out of it.
Yeah.
And like, you tell your parents, I'm a professional snowboarder. I make a good amount of money. I'm doing okay.
Too much money.
How were your folks with it, with the decision to be a pro snowboarder?
I honestly, I won nationals, USASA nationals, and I remember being in 12th grade, and my grades were always up and down, so my parents were never really stressing me to go to college. They're like, whatever, like, who knows what's going to happen, but they were cool with it. They knew where I was moving, and they knew I loved snowboarding, so I was like, hey, I'm going to go out here and try to do this, but I honestly didn't have confidence in myself because everybody else was so good. It wasn't until I went to Mount Hood to really, really get better at snowboarding to where I was at the level. But my parents were cool with it. They were down. After the first year I was in Colorado, I remember my mom calling me in the spring being like, you might want to go to college. I don't know what you're doing with your life out there.
Right.
Now you're just out there snowboarding, hanging out, and your friends aren't really, your friends are kind of doing whatever. But then I was like, hey, Mom, I got to do this now or never. And I got a job at Mount Hood. I went to Mount Hood, and I worked all summer nonstop. And then I would meet people, and then things it took me a while, I didn't really become a pro snowboarder until I was 21 years old, where now it's like you're kind of done at 21, especially with the competition stuff going on.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So
what an awesome time to do it, though. Hey, like that was the time to do it, because everything, it wasn't just about money or anything. It was just about continuing to do the thing that's so fun in your life.
It's like you loved it, and it was everything was so new. Like for me, maybe it is that way for kids now. I don't know, but I remember it was like, and you couldn't see it every day. You could only see the movies in the fall and then the magazines once a month. But every time you saw that, it was just like your eyes were glued to it. And you just did it because you loved it. And whether you made it or not, I would have been a team manager. I would have been I always wanted to be in the industry somehow, I guess, just because it's either that or just go work a regular job that I'm not passionate about, which seems kind of hellish.
Yeah, not an option. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for talking to me, dude. That was super friggin' fun. I can't even tell you how many people that I've mentioned your name to that they light up. I
mean, I'm extremely honored that you would even call me, and I would be in a list of all those people that are already on the list of your podcast is insane. Like, I appreciate that. Oh, thank you for being a snowboarder that was that good and that passionate about it. You were pushing at the edge of where the progression was. So that's dope. I don't think even most pros get to right at that edge. You know what I mean? It's a hard place to go. No, thank you. I mean, like I said, I'd watch Mac Dog and Whitey movies and TV movies, and I would just go try to do those tricks, and then it became progressive out of that, Yeah. But, yeah, that's friggin' awesome. Thank you. Yeah, dude. Thanks for doing the interview. That was friggin' awesome, bro. Awesome. Thank you. Hope to ride with you someday. Yeah, let's do it. I'll be doing that road trip again next year. I'm trying to make it an annual thing. It's pretty awesome. FNRad shoutouts this week to Jesse Oy. He's a listener who came up to me and said, "Hey, I recognize your voice in the lift line." Turns out Jesse was a writer for one of my favorite magazines back in the day, Concrete Powder. Right on, Jesse. Nice to talk with you. I'd like to shout out Tony Lefroy for getting a Corey Smith designed spring brake board under my feet. I tried it at the Catamaran at the boardroom demos of next year's stuff, and it generated a lot of conversations in the lift line, as well as it rode really, really amazing. It's a lightweight board with a very funky core, balsa wood. You guys check out Spring Break. You don't need me to tell you that their stuff is fucking awesome. Thanks again to the boardroom for putting on that event. I'm trying to do this quick so I can go shred a bit of Night Park on my wired Directive 157. Stoked to do it. It's still cold here in BC, so I'll let you guys go, but make sure you come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboarding Podcast, brought to you by BR Productions. I actually lived in Whistler in 2003 and 4 for like 2 months. I lived with Johnson down in Squamish. Wow, really? And how was that? Yeah, it was fun, but I mean, it's crazy. I got lost there. There's just so much stuff going on. And 2003, 2004, was he just starting Stepchild at that point? He made Video Gangs in 2003, and then I didn't live with him that year because they had a farmhouse. But then the next year he made Promo Copy. Oh yeah. And I think he was starting Stepchild then. Or maybe he had it going on, but he produced Video Gangs. Yeah. And then 2004, he made Promo Copy, and I was filming for that, so I just went and stayed at his house for like 2 months. Yeah. I hit like 4 jumps. It was like raining the whole time, but. Yeah, it can be gnarly. It cool. Yeah. Yeah, it can rain forever up here. It's insane. Awesome, dude. I like interior a little better, to be honest. Yeah, if you hit it properly. I shouldn't say I like it better. I've had better experiences there. Right. It's steep. But, it's good light snow. M3 was out of Portland. Yeah, I went to the factory when I was down there. They seem to have it pretty dialed. It's just Mount Hood. You're always, they did good. I think once I don't know, when it seemed like once they blew up and started making a lot of boards, they started falling apart. Yes. Yeah. Because they probably have been skimping on materials or something. I don't know, but it seemed like that was the issue. Like, all my boards fell apart. That's why, like, working for making boards now, I'm like, we're making the best boards. I believe in them. They're not going to fall apart on you. If they do, then fire me. Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember M3 and Molly and the soy sauce connection, and people would use that as a, like, well, at least we're not a soy sauce company, kind of like as a dig. But the people that were running... Yeah, well, Peter said that in his interview. Oh, yeah, he probably did, didn't he?
now it seems like who knows who owns companies now? Nobody knows.
It's like somebody's giving you money, and snowboarders are running it. It's the snowboard company.
Right, and the owners were cool. They were cool. They were like, they gave you guys the reins and said, like, here you go. Make it work.
Yeah, I mean, Yoshida had nothing to do with it. He was just like, here's the dough.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Which so, I thought that was awesome. I remember the brand being like, it was really, really good. But yeah, the boards fell apart. And then you can only handle that 1 or 2 seasons. And then people just start going to whatever the next thing is. All right.
Take it easy.
Yeah.
Best of luck with everything you do, and keep doing it. I love it.
Thanks, man. That's so sick.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how stoked I am to hear that. Thanks, man.